In 2013, I was invited to give evidence to the law ministers and attorneys general of the Commonwealth as to the international law standards that should apply in relation to homosexuality. This was peculiarly important because there are 72 countries around the world that still criminalize consenting adult gay love. Of those, nearly half are Commonwealth countries. It's really a problem that lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender folk are criminalized for who they are and who they love. Now, most countries in the world have laws against discrimination. Put those together with the UN resolutions on equal treatment, and you have a law, an international law, which says it is illegal to criminalize consenting adult gay love. So, back to the law ministers. The Singaporean delegate, after I had finished making my presentation, said, "We all know why Mr. Stephens urges this change in the law upon us. It's because of his own peculiar proclivities." I thought for a moment. He'd just accused me of being a gay man pleading special privilege. I pointed out to him that I'd also been an advocate for the Race Relations Act, but I'm peculiarly pink. So, what is a straight man doing advocating for this? They say hard cases make bad law, but they also sometimes make advocates and allies for change. When I was growing up, consenting adult gay love was criminalized in this country. So one day I had a friend, Colin, my best friend at school. Colin seemed to have the idyllic life. He had a bigger house than we did. They had a spare room. They had a nice car, a new one, a Humber Super Snipe, if I remember it. Google it up. They had better toys. He and his sister Irene had better toys. They had Mousetrap, something I always coveted. And we always played when I went round to theirs. Anyway, one night, a frisson went down our avenue where we lived. Colin's dad, coming back to where we lived in suburban Surrey, was arrested for cottaging at Waterloo Station. A policeman had been on toilet duty, that is, acting as an agent provocateur to criminalize bisexual and gay men. Colin's dad pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail. He lost his job, he lost his wife, and he lost his children, because for an offense like that, you weren't allowed contact with your children anymore. Colin, Irene, and their mother moved away to the south coast somewhere where the stain of this particular kind of crime wouldn't follow them. I never heard from them again. I think about them often, and I wonder what happened to them, and how this particular crime and conviction impacted on their lives. Now, it's a truism that gay people need allies. They can't always fight on their own account. If they confess to being gay, then they would immediately be criminalized. Recently, in the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal, a man who was being prosecuted for making love to another man, we made the point in court and said he can't come to his trial, can't attend his own trial. And the reason is because it's a criminal offense in Trinidad to pass through immigration if you happen to be a gay man. The judges were slightly flummoxed by this legal argument, never heard it before. So they went away for 2 weeks to think about it carefully, and they came back and they said, actually, it's all right for a gay man to come to Trinidad after all. as long as it's only to attend his trial and he gets on the first scheduled flight out of here, immediately it's over. We thought we might have perceived a chink opening in the colonial legacy of discrimination. Back in London, I got a bit more abuse from other attorneys general and law ministers. And then a friendly African voice stood up, an attorney general. And he said, "Look, Mark, you've got to understand that we all understand what our international law obligations are, but if we repealed these laws, none of us would be re-elected. So if you come to our country and you have the courts repeal those laws, then in those circumstances, we will reluctantly enforce the law and change it and decriminalize, and then everybody will be happy." I thought everybody happy was probably putting it a bit of a stretch, but it did occur to me that the idea of coming together with many other lawyers around the world to challenge this colonial legacy of discriminatory laws was a good idea. And I thought that this is the way forward and this is what we should do. I thought you'd be interested to know what the history of this is. It's slightly unusual. It's actually something called Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. The reason it was introduced in colonial India was that the Viscount Pemberton, the Prime Minister of the day, thought it was unseemly to discuss such matters in the mother of all parliaments in London. It seemed to be all right in the colonies. And so it was brought in India, and then the British government, the colonial government, cut it out and took it and pasted it in colony after colony after colony around the world. Some countries, as they secure their independence, are rolling back this colonial legacy of discrimination. Take Belize. In 2016, the Belizean constitution came to be considered by their courts. It was the provision in relation to discrimination on the grounds of sex. The judges concluded that wording meant not just gender, but also sexual orientation. They said, we're here to make legal judgments, not moral ones. There have been further changes. In the last year in Trinidad, an LGBT activist sought to have the High Court strike down as null and void the laws criminalizing adult gay sex. The High Court considered the matter and determined that it was, after all, anti-constitutional. They were illegal, null, void, invalid, and of no effect. A pretty comprehensive victory, I thought. Tremendous successes have also taken place in other places of the world. After 20 years of litigation in India, finally, Section 377 has been repealed. The judge understood the profoundly negative impact on a huge swathe of the population. He said, 158 years ago, a colonial legislature, that's Britain, made it a criminal offence even for consenting adults of the same gender to find fulfillment in love. The law deprived them of the simple right to live, love, and partner as nature made them. A simple underscoring of just how many people are deemed criminal for who they are and who they love, and all this a British colonial legacy. A legacy not found, interestingly, in other colonial powers. They didn't impose these laws on their colonies. And it's only recently been acknowledged in this country. Last year, Theresa May acknowledged that we've got to understand and pay respect to what we did to the LGBT citizens of the British Commonwealth. She said, as a family of nations, we must respect and we must respect one another's cultures and traditions, handily ignoring, of course, that it was a culture and tradition imposed by the British. She went on, we must do so in a manner consistent with the common values that we share of equality, a value enshrined in the Commonwealth Charter of Rights. So as noted by our friendly Attorney General, these countries all know what their obligations are in international law. The problem is that defending the human rights of LGBT people has its limits, apparently defined by the political ambitions of those in power. To make progress, it seems to me that we have to take cases to protect the LGBT communities around the world, to decriminalize them for who they are, and to get rid of this colonial legacy. We're seeing progress towards equality, charted here by the Human Dignity Trust. Now, decriminalization is abhorrent. We all agree on that. Injustice like that perpetrated and meted out to Collins' family is being meted out around the world today, as you can see. Hard cases make bad law. But with attorney generals fearful of losing their jobs, the law must step in where politicians fail to act. Thank you.